Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. We have a very exciting video today. So for those of you who don't know, I am a certificate in education student. So currently I am learning how to teach. One of the forefronts of that is teaching students who are neurodivergent. So for those of you who don't know, that means people with ADHD, people with autism, people with Asperger's. And to be honest, my knowledge on that is a little bit lacking. I think thanks to TikTok, which is like terrible to say, but I have found accounts on there where people have really talked about autism specifically, and I have been able to understand it and have an understanding for it that has just, I think, made me a better, more empathetic person. So I wanted to make kind of an informal series on this channel where I interview creatives, photographers, things like that, who are neurodivergent. So today we have Thomas Oscar Miles, who is an absolutely amazing fine art self-portrait artist who also happens to have autism. So I was really interested to see his experience having autism, being in the education system, what he feels like will help. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it allows you to have a little bit more knowledge. If you are someone who's neurodivergent, feel more seen and more heard. And if you're an educator, I hope it makes you a better one. Brilliant. Okay, so hi Tom, thank you again so much for being a part of the interview. Just to begin with, if you could give us a little bio, and obviously I'm going to be showing some of your absolutely amazing work as well, but just tell us a little bit about yourself, your photography journey, how you got started.
Yeah, of course. So I am Thomas Oscar Miles. I am a fine art and self-empowerment photographer. So that kind of entails telling really personal narratives and finding strength through personal vulnerabilities. I started when I was about maybe 16 at school. I did it at GCSE, and then from that I went to college and I did a course and I did a HNC certificate in that. So I got to learn all sort of aspects of both professional and the sort of creative side of photography. From learning and all that spectrum of it, I've started to make my own business out of it. So I've started doing weddings, I've started doing gallery work, I've started doing like teaching and workshops as well. So it's been a really incredible journey into sort of understanding what I want to be doing with photography and how I can use it as a tool to hopefully inspire others.
True. Now forgive me, my awareness on this area is a little bit not lacking. I feel like I'm learning more, but obviously neurodivergence isn't something that I personally experience, so that is the whole point of this video. So if at any point I say something that's not technically correct, please correct me or enlighten me. But am I right in thinking, so you have an autism diagnosis?
I do, yeah. So I got it from very young age. It was basically about my learning and speech therapy and things like that. So yeah, and we all get things wrong. We're all learning. So I think that's why conversation like this is so good, because we all learn together, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I think why I have a little bit more of awareness. I think it's Mona Log on
Yeah.
Instagram and TikTok. She was talking specifically how she adjusted for her wedding. So obviously weddings can be very draining events, especially for people who are neurodivergent. So she had to adjust quite a bit, and it was just so enlightening for me because I had no idea that that would ever need to be a consideration, or the different things that she did, like having regular breaks, changing the structure of the day and things like that. So I think for me it just sort of outlined actually how these differences can really affect us and how we need to adjust for them. And I'm the kind of person, like, if I can learn more about a subject, I'd rather know and I'd rather be aware.
Mhm.
So the whole point of this interview is to really look at how neurodivergence can affect your photography and specifically affect your learning. So in regards to your GCSEs, in regards to your HNC, what was your experience with learning? Do you feel like adjustments were made for you, or do you feel like you really struggled in certain aspects?
I'll be honest and say my autism was a large impact in my life when I was a lot younger and when I'm a lot older. So I feel like
Mhm.
as sort of primary school and like a teenager, I kind of it almost felt like it skipped by me and I didn't really acknowledge my autism as much. Um, So when I was just getting into mainstream schooling, there was a big debate as to whether I should be in mainstream school or whether I need to go to a school that was specialist for people with autism and kind of learn in that sort of environment. And through getting into mainstream school, it was kind of almost like it was kind of forgotten about having autism. And I think maybe when I was a lot younger and I struggled with speech and I developed a lot slower, I think there was a lot more accommodation then. I think I had, I'm trying to remember, but I think I had a separate sort of teacher in some of the smaller, like younger classes, so you would kind of have a one-to-one time. But as I got older and my speech came through and I was learning at a rate like the other kids were, sort of things like that tend to be dropped off the radar. So through that then into like secondary school and stuff, it tended to have been a case where I was like a normal kid, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
So I kind of just went through school like I didn't have autism, and it's almost like I forgot, which is kind of sad. And it's only maybe in the last few years that I've actually started to go, actually I have autism and I need to know how it impacts my life. So there's probably ways where it impacted my education, but I don't actually know, if that makes sense. It's just kind of it's always been a part of me, of course, but it's kind of, I've never been able to put an answer to things. So when I had struggles at school, potentially there was a link with that, like the autism was kind of the reasoning I might have struggled, or maybe it was just something I went through. So as I'm going into adulthood, I'm kind of still trying to learn in myself how I struggled, and now I'm kind of taking those skills into my future and kind of helping through the future, really.
So as you've obviously grown and as you've looked into, again, forgive me if I'm not wording this correctly, what are certain things that you have noticed that maybe do affect the way that you perceive the world, or maybe you need to handle things from a different angle?
Sure,
Are there
yeah.
certain things?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's kind of, I mean, a big one at the moment is sudden change. I really struggle with that. So I've taken that into my work life now. I think maybe the reason why I didn't notice it so much is because school was very structured. And I think I and potentially a lot of other people with autism or on the spectrum, we kind of thrive in structure. I've noticed through like chats like this and get to know other people. So knowing that every week would be the same lesson or the same times and I had a routine, I sort of thrived in that. And now I'm going to adulthood and the routine's what I make of it. It's kind of, I'm kind of realizing, oh, I do need that structure, yeah. So I feel like that was a really key thing, just learning routine and trying to put that into my everyday life. Certain like sensory issues I struggle with, so like a lot of loud sudden noises tend to freak me out a little bit. I always say my autism personally is like the Wizard of Oz and like the wizard behind the curtain. Like you see this kind of, I don't know, facade or this person and everything's kind of going on behind the curtain. And it's all stuff that goes on in my mind that you can almost mask, which is kind of like hiding how you feel and things. And I tend to do that quite well. So it's trying to unleash the mask and not be like trying to be someone else, just let my feelings be true and be shown. So yeah, lots of little things that kind of I'm trying to still unlock with each day, really.
I have heard of masking, and now, trying to think of the word. Disclaimer: it was off TikTok, but I've heard that apparently, I think I have definitely been part of the problem where someone has told me that they're autistic, and I've been like, "What? You don't seem to be that way." And I don't know, obviously each individual person is different, but I can imagine masking is perhaps a very big part of that. And what I've heard is that it's very exhausting. Is that your experience?
Very true. Very true. It's hard. It's like a full-time job. It's like, imagine you've got a job and then you've got another job that you do like 24 hours a day. I mean, you sleep, but the rest of the time it's it's a lot. I mean, I've done some photos on masking. I've made a little mini series about it, a part of my Autism series, which I'm happy to talk about in a little bit as well. And it was just basically, for me and my research on it and how I experienced it, is where you kind of hide maybe autistic traits or characteristics so you can kind of blend in with a certain situation. So almost like camouflage. That's how I see it anyway. So, I've done photos where it's me trying to paint myself blue and match blue flowers around me. And I think for me, using photography as a tool to kind of not only explain it for other people, but for myself. So I've kind of gone, okay, this is what I go through. This is what it means. How can I make that clear in my mind and for other people too? So I've started creating imagery that kind of visually represents sort of what I go through and other people go through as well, and put that into art that hopefully can educate and bring us together, people with autism or that are on the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the wonderful thing about photography, isn't it? It's that element of self-expression, and I think sometimes there can be a scenario where, as they say, a picture says 1,000 words, and as we go into this, I don't know, this new stage of social media, I think we're both improving and maybe taking a step backwards, where a lot of photography at the moment is just because it looks nice, or because it'll do well on social media, for example. And I think that actually the photographers who are creating work, not to diminish the work that looks nice, I do it myself, it's just a form of creativity, there's no real deeper meaning to it, but yeah, those people that are sharing perhaps a deeper message is amazing, because at the end of the day there might be someone who's a lot younger, maybe has, for whatever reason, for themselves or from other people, has a certain shame around their diagnosis, or maybe even a confusion because they haven't got a diagnosis yet. And I think them just being able to connect to something, connect to a photo, will just mean the world to them. And that's the truth. You don't know how your image is going to be interpreted by someone else. It could be interpreted by someone, just the image in itself, and have nothing to do with the subject matter that you had in mind, but it can definitely mean a lot to different people.
Oh God, absolutely. I think that's the thing, and when you put it out into the big wide world, and you never know who's actually going to connect with it, because we're all behind screens and we can't see it, and we can't see truly who's seeing our work. So just being vulnerable and putting yourself out there like that is very daunting, because on one hand, it's, you don't know who's going to see it. There could be a lot of negatives, which I've experienced in my time, but there's also what sort of overweighs that for me is the positives, and knowing that there are people out there, like you said, that might need to see that might connect with that work, and you can build that sort of relationship and community almost with people, and sort of make bridges and help people answer questions they've got, and you can answer your own questions or bring out questions in people they didn't know they needed. So it's a beautiful way to make communities, and just for us to all be open, because as I love all the pretty art out there as well. I'd never want to diminish anybody's art.
No.
We've said that everyone's work is beautiful and valid, but I think going beyond that for me, like similar to you with your work, which is gorgeous, but seeing like that journey into putting a story and a meaning behind the work as well. A lot of people can take a very pretty picture and that's amazing, but to go beyond that and to put some sort of context and a personal narrative into that, to kind of elevate it almost and bring people together, because we can be selfish as artists and do art for us, but what's more incredible is doing that and making art for other people.
Definitely. So I have a question. I think there's, whenever you come up with an idea for a photo, I don't know if it's the same for you, there is that initial spark, that initial idea that thinks, oh, okay, I'll do that. Like when I thought of doing this interview, I had that spark. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night or something. I was like, I'll just message Tom and ask him if he's interested. I am curious, so what was that initial spark? What did that look like for you in regards to photography as a whole? So I know you said it was linked to GCSEs, but when was it that you kind of had the idea to start photography overall? And then I want to go into your Autismus, is that how you pronounce? Yeah, that project. So what was the spark for that as well?
Amazing. So what sparked photography for me was, I've always been creative. I've always been very blessed with kind of art, and I've always had a passion for it. I did it at school, and I was asked early by my teacher, Miss Brown, to do fashion textiles as a GCSE. So she really saw. Oh, she was amazing, lovely woman. She still goes. She's still amazing. Yeah, she saw something in me that I don't think I did yet, and I was able to do fashion and experiment with art and just be crafty and not perfect, and it was great. And then I was kind of doing just like street photography and just everyday photos of the world around me. And then through my photography course, I discovered artists like Brooke Shaden and really surrealist artists that were going a bit beyond the everyday photography. And
Yeah.
instead of creating the worlds that were around me, they were creating the worlds that, you know, they wish they saw. So that's kind of how I wanted photography to be for me. It wasn't about the technical of the apertures and, you know, all that, which is very
Yeah.
important. But for me, it was about the story and putting something else out there into the world that wasn't obviously a photo. So I kind of started from there in terms of being the fantasy photographer, and all the kids at school were like, how the hell are you doing all this? And it was all, you know, big edits and over the top things. And my GCSE final project was loads of girls from my school underwater, and it was like in big dresses, and it was a whole day. And my dad had to sign leases for the whole situation. So it was all go from there. So then I went into kind of understanding what I wanted to do with my art, and through learning more about my personal journey with autism, I started to come up with a series called Autismus, which is kind of an ever-growing collection of work. It's not finite, it's not like a start finish, it's just kind of growing with me. So it's a collection of images that are about what I go through with autism, certain learn difficulties growing up, or things that I go through on a day-to-day basis. And each image has just come into fruition as I've learned about what I'm going through. So as I said earlier, there's pictures about masking and certain traits around that. I've had ones about social situations and how sometimes in like crowded spaces things can feel like they're blurring. There's pictures about needing to start a new day, because I love the feeling that no matter what goes wrong in today, there's always a new day coming. You can start over.
Yeah. Start over.
So thank you. Yeah. So a lot of images were like that, and it's a series where it was quite just for me. Like it's not for anybody else to kind of put there like you have to create 20 images and you're going to sell all the images. It's just because I want to create it and I want to put it out there and tell my story. And there's been a lot of instances where, you know, people either close in my life or have been following me, or even complete strangers have been able to connect with what I've been saying. And it's so much easier to put it into my art than to just have to say, oh, you know, I have autism and I do this and now I go through this, because it feels harder to kind of have to put it into words. So I don't know if you're the same with being a creative through like visuals, but putting something you're thinking into a visual is so much, I don't know, just nicer and like just relaxing compared to having to talk about it through words, really. So I think the spark just came from that wanting to do something more personal, something more like self-fulfilling, and just knowing that it was going to help other people.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what was the first image that you made as part of the series, or was it a series of images that you had in mind?
I think so. Again, it wasn't really a like I'm going to do the series because of blank. Like usually, I'm very structured. I like my plans, but this was very much like an organic. Oh, I've done a lot of images on this. Maybe I should make a series or a collection, as I call them. So I think the first one I can think of is I did one where it's me in a poppy field and I've got one poppy just over my mouth, and I just shot it because I really like the poppy field. It really wasn't for like a concept at the time, so I was like, yeah, poppies, let's do it. And then I looked back later on, I was finding through my images and stuff, and I found it, and it was just this one poppy that was just over my mouth. And it was, to me, I could just see the story come to life. And one of the first parts of my autism was about how I couldn't speak for a very long time. I didn't have full speech till about the age of 5, I think it was. So not having a voice for that long, to me now seems very surreal. So going for all that speech therapy that my mom amazingly took me to and supported me with, it just kind of shows now kind of the value of my voice, I think. So just knowing that I had to work to have a voice in the first place kind of made me think that I need to use it for some good now. So realizing that kind of idea and seeing that image just brought it all together for me. And gradually through, especially during the lockdowns and things, I managed to play with kind of what I go through personally and put that into stories that could connect with others. So yeah, I think I took the photo back in maybe 2018, and maybe like 2020 I came up with the full concept roughly. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's been a nice stepping stone journey, and it's still
Hmm.
going, which is amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think it is. It's very nice to revisit old photographs,
Hmm.
and I think it's one of those where like you can read a book, for example, at different points of your life and take different things for it. You can take photos and then think actually that concept might work very well with that. So as I said in the intro, at the moment I am doing a certificate in education. So part of learning, well, no, part of teaching is having obviously neurodivergent children or students that come to the institution that I teach at, and it has been a whole new world of kind of figuring out how to help them. So I have two questions for you. First of all, what would your advice be for teachers who are looking to make their classrooms a much more inclusive space? Obviously, each individual person does differ, but is there anything that you feel like you would have really benefited from as a student?
Like you said, everyone's different, so totally, there's
Mm-hmm.
never going to be a defining. If you do this, it's going to help
Mm-hmm.
everybody, because
Mm-hmm.
you might do something for one kid and that actually makes somebody struggle. But
Yeah.
I think it's if teachers have that sort of full knowledge of what
Mm-hmm.
kids with autism or adults with autism go through, I think just having a conscious knowledge is a really big win, because
Mm-hmm.
that when I was younger, it almost felt like autism was like forbidden to talk about. Like I've been
Yeah.
told you don't have autism, oh don't,
Mhm.
and it seems very like it felt very taboo basically. So I
Yeah.
think if teachers have like what you're doing now is incredible, and that willing
Mhm.
to learn more, and for teachers to be able to have those conversations and not make it such a overall arcing scary big thing, that's already such a
Yeah.
big win. So I think having
Mhm.
that education with the teachers first is incredible. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say things like sensory rooms are amazing as well. So
Mhm.
either rooms that have like fidget toys or certain lighting are great assets to have, or even just
Mhm.
quiet spaces that kids that maybe have sensory issues or on the spectrum might need to get away. I think that's brilliant. So I use that in my day-to-day life now, just knowing that I
Mhm.
have a little corner somewhere I can just escape to if I need to. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, knowledge is power, I think. So that would be my biggest one.
Mhm. That's so interesting because I think as well as obviously they're different, but there's a lot of students. So I teach in a higher education, foundation education, so like teenagers essentially, and then
Mm.
going into adults. And there are a lot of mental health issues as well, like people who have anxiety who might just need a moment. So
Yeah,
that's a really interesting concept, to be honest, that idea where there is somewhere for them to go. Because
yeah,
I imagine, like, say if you were just having a panic attack or something like that, and you felt like you had to leave the classroom, it can be very embarrassing. You can feel very different. It's kind of like, well, where do you go? You
yeah,
probably will just run to the toilet or something like that. And I think perhaps having those specific spaces
yeah.
would be good. I don't know about teenagers. I feel like it's kind of helping as many people as you can, but I wonder if maybe teenagers would just, whenever they've had enough, go to that particular room. But I think the sensory room is a really, really good idea. The second question that I have is, if you were a student who didn't have a diagnosis, maybe they relate to things that they've learned online, things that they've seen through maybe your work or someone else's work, and they're feeling a little bit lost or confused, what would your advice be to them?
Um, I think similar to what I said before, that knowledge is power. So if
Yeah.
we have people in place that have that knowledge, so if the teachers were aware of kind of, you don't have to know everything, but just know the foundation of what, autism or ADHD or however they are on the spectrum, if they are or not, just knowing sort of the spectrum in general is really key. So
Mm-hmm.
having that information with them and making it a conversation with kids, it would be great if there was more actual lessons on neurodivergence and just education to give out to the kids as well, because
Yeah.
that was missing from my education, and I've had to kind of learn about it as I becoming an adult. So
Yeah.
I think just having that sort of conversation and knowledge out there for kids to have would have been really beneficial for me in my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just having that, um, easily available for kids, whether it's through books or whether it's through classes or the teacher's knowledge. I think that would have really helped me.
Yeah, because as you said, a lot of things, they are taboo, and people don't understand a lot about them, and they might, even think, this is a negative thing or a limitation. From my perspective, I would much rather be aware of, or at least know an idea that someone might need, especially in a classroom sense, might need a little bit of extra support, or they might need a certain, I don't know the word, but something extra. And again, this is coming from a neurotypical person, so I don't know if this is the right way to think about it, but sometimes when I come across people who are neurodivergent, I can think that they're being rude, or I can think that maybe it's a sign that they're not very kind. So for me, I personally feel like I enjoy that awareness, and I enjoy understanding why, and it just, like I said, I don't make those wrong assumptions.
Yeah, I think labels are a very powerful thing. They can be good and they can be bad, and I think it's how you use them that's important. So for me, when I was growing up, I didn't hide my label, but it just naturally hid, and I just had to live with that. And then as I got into adulthood, I started to find my label sort of covered in cobwebs and be like, oh, I do have this, okay. And it kind of helped answer a lot of questions I didn't know I had. So it's like, oh, okay, that's why I go through this, because I have autism, or oh, I didn't know that about myself. And I think since finding out more about my autism and kind of embracing that label, I've started to learn about myself a lot more. And I notice when I might be struggling a lot more in situations, or there might be things that are going on that kind of just sort of link together with it. And it's my label has sort of become an answer to me. And it doesn't define me. It's not all I am. I'm not just autistic. I am Tom, but I also have autism. So it's like a beautiful handbag that I carry with me. It's not all I am, but it's a great accessory that sort of is a part of me,
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's a wonderful analogy.
Don't know why a handbag, but you can have that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think, especially I think because at the moment I'm still learning. So I'm still in that space where I'm going up to particular students. And again, I'm working with slightly older students. So by this point, as far as I'm aware, but then again, like speaking to you, I've kind of realised that maybe I don't know, what everyone is going through. But usually I am aware of a person's diagnosis, so I can now go to them and just say, and with certain things I might say, look, I've got this thing that, this activity, you might struggle with it. If you do, don't panic. Just sort of get through what you can. If you can't complete it, it's fine. And then kind of review it from there. Or I might notice that a student is struggling with a certain task, and then kind of adjust from there. And I like that. I like the fact that, I've spoken to people that work in a variety of different schools, and maybe schools where there is that, higher attention needs that they need, and certain adjustments that they need to make. And the advice is always just go and speak to the student, just ask them what they need. But I suppose, like you said, it also comes from the idea of giving the students the power to be able to recognise that in themselves, because as teachers and parents, obviously we can look at the signs, but as we said, everyone is different. There is elements of our society where people perhaps don't feel comfortable in showing certain traits of themselves, or certain, elements of themselves, because of the feeling, especially in school. Let's face it, none of us wanted to be different in school, do we? We just wanted to fit in. So I suppose, I really like that idea that you said of teaching children, or students or teenagers or whatever, or even adults, the signs so that they can recognise it in themselves if they need to.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think that's amazing. And I think a lot of things in life can come down to communication, and just having that open level of communication between one and the other. And I think, like we said earlier about the taboo behind, autism or neurodivergence, there's a lot of, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or what if I offend somebody, if I, bring it up. And, if someone says you have autism and you don't, people would instantly feel like they have to be offended by that. But, it's not really an offensive thing. It's just, something people go through. So I think it's kind of that communication, like you said, and just, not being afraid to go up to the students or whoever it is and kind of just having that almost casual chat. It doesn't have to be a formal one-to-one serious meeting. It can just be just bring it up in conversation. If there's something there, then you can go further with it. If not, you've sort of spoken about it. And there's always opportunities to kind of have conversations about it, and no matter how big or small. And I think they really help, and having just lots of different little opportunities to find answers is just amazing.
Yeah, and what you said about feeling uncomfortable, like, I will be honest, I felt very uncomfortable, and I thought, I hope he's not going to take offence, the fact that I'm reaching out. So it's nice to see the other side of that. And even, I don't know, I think it's part of our society, isn't it? It's kind of maybe perhaps thinking people want to keep things private, but then you can give the opportunity. So if you see someone, for example, with a sunflower badge, that looks a little bit different, and might be a sunflower badge or might be something else. I have a person in my life who has that, and I'm wondering if maybe there's something going on, and I'm wondering if I should ask the question. You don't need to share it if you don't want to, but is there anything that I can be doing to make your life easier right now?
Because I think that's lovely.
Yeah,
it's not making it a big serious like, oh, what's wrong, what do I do? It's just compliment the badge, just be like, oh, it's a really lovely badge, where did you get it? And just sparking that conversation and not putting any like premise into it kind of lets them bring it up, because they probably know why you're asking, but it's kind of not being too directly like, what's wrong, we don't know what's that. So just kind of, oh, I love your badge, or love your lanyard, where did you get that from? And then just say, oh, is anything, can I do anything today, or however it comes up. Just be light and kind. I mean, you're lovely anyway, so you wouldn't have any problem with that. But just I think that's we just need kindness, just everyone wants a bit of kindness. So
kindness and a little bit of effort and a little bit of open-mindedness, and I think also in this in this scenario, a little bit of risk as well, being able to take the risk of maybe saying the wrong thing and just sort of saying, like, I don't mean it in a bad way, it's just ignorance.
That's it. Sometimes I'd rather, like, if someone says something wrong, at least they're trying, like I wouldn't mind. I would never be like, how dare you, like, I don't hold anything that personally tight to my chest, because for me that's an opportunity to have a conversation, or just kind of like just talk it out. And that's all you need, really. It shouldn't have to be a big like scary thing. Let's just talk about it.
Fabulous. So I know that I've seen on your Instagram, and I know you also mentioned it as well, you were talking about how you're leading workshops in the future. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Of course, I'm really excited about this. So me and the Telford Autism Hub have started working together on creating some workshops together. So the aim is that we're going to teach a lovely group of people all about self-empowerment through photography, and how we can sort of translate that from concepts that we come up with to final fine art level photos that we're going to print and exhibit all around, hopefully with time depending, around like the Autism Awareness Day, which is in April, I believe. So it's going to be an amazing opportunity where we've rallied about maybe 6 or 7 on the course. So it's a lovely intimate group, and probably going to be starting next month, I believe. We're going to be talking about how we can come up with stories, how we can plan ideas, loads of different exercises and stuff that are all catered around talking about autism specifically. So all talking about, the aim of it basically is that we all talk about one personal thing that we go through with our autism or being on the spectrum, and translating that into a visual story, which is what I try and do in my work. So I love to show kind of examples and do like quirky exercises, just to kind of open people's minds to thinking differently and challenging their perceptions. So so it's really exciting. And the whole workshop game is opening up for me, and I just love teaching and talking about it, and being able to talk about stuff that you're really passionate about is great, because like with autism as well, you tend to have like hyper focus, I think it's called. So you really get like obsessed with one thing, and usually it's photography or like an idea for me, and no one wants to hear it. So if people want to hear it, they can pay, and it's great. So so I'm really excited. It's kind of everything coming together, hopefully. So yeah, it's all cool.
And I imagine that's the brilliant thing as well about having a photography business that incorporates elements of like social media and content marketing is you do just have that void that you can speak into and share. And like we said, it's so much more than if you were in a room of people and talking about something that perhaps doesn't relate to them, or they're not ready to hear it, or it's not something that they're interested in, as you say.
Yeah,
Um,
that's hard
yeah.
because like with masking as well, you're going to be like in a social situation and you're going to feel like you can't talk about your things because you pick up on cues and you can't quite read how people are feeling. Typically that's what I go through anyway, but yeah, with the internet it's a powerful tool to kind of put everything you want out there on your terms, and you can control who sees it, who doesn't see it. You can put it out there in the right way. So sometimes when I write it down in text, it's better than when I say it through my voice. So it's been amazing for me, and you build a community and people come to you that want to hear your story. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, I just want to say, I know how much hard work goes into running a photography business in general. I know how hard you would have had to work and how long you've spent creating amazing work. Secondly, behind the scenes, and all of the hours and hours of effort and work and motivation, like self-motivation, that goes into making the connections to get to the point where you're able to run workshops. But also I just want to congratulate you on the fact that you are able to make something meaningful with your work, and you're able to sort of turn it into something to help other people as well. And I don't know if Tom, who first picked up the camera, would have imagined how much he would have been able to do. So congratulations on that, and well done for all of your work.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for being on this crazy journey with me. It's so cool. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. If you could let us know your social media, where we can find you so we can check out your fantastic work.
Of course. So I am Thomas Oscar Miles everywhere. So it's on Thomas Oscar Miles on Facebook, on Instagram, and I've got a website, thomasoscarmiles.com.
Right, so thank you so much for coming and chatting to me. Thank you so much for letting me share this with other people. I really appreciate it. And yeah, good luck with everything. I'm sure we'll all be watching.
Thank you, and to you.